Hello and welcome to the Radiant Presence podcast. My name is Puja, and today I want to share with you my purpose and intention for starting this podcast and what it is about. For most of my life, I have believed that my worth and my value is linked to what I do and accomplish and achieve. And there were two influencing factors in arriving at this belief. They started early. The first one was that I was born and raised in India, where the simple fact that being born as a female deemed me less worthy than my male counterparts. I learned very quickly through implicit and explicit messaging that my entire worth would hinge on how much and how well I was serving and caring for the men around me. I can tell you now that this idea made me very angry. It rubbed me the wrong way from a very early age. I'll talk more about that rage and how it was alchemized over the years in upcoming episodes. But let's return to the other influencing factor. It was way more insidious, it was harder to recognize because it was so pervasive, and it took me much longer to unsubscribe from. And to be honest, I'm not sure I have fully unsubscribed from it. It was this Western mindset, which was very prevalent in India. The India I grew up in is and was highly populated, very competitive, with a very scientific, logic-based culture. And in this environment, I learned very early that my worth was being measured based on what I was producing, the accomplishments that could be measured, whether I was excelling at academics or winning debates or dance or poetry competitions, if I was making it to a reputable college and getting a job with a known corporation, if I was basically taking the next steps in getting the raises and the promotions and meeting the metrics that were acceptable to those around me. I was really seen, rewarded, and acknowledged when I was bending over backwards with the measurables. And I felt like a failure if I wasn't. If, for example, I chose to help someone at school or at work, and as a result I missed a deadline, then I would be penalized for that, or I would be made to feel like a loser. And when I moved to the United States, I saw the exact same thing, maybe worse, that everything that was considered valuable and worthy had to be measured and tangible. And I could see that while these metrics were important to the world around me, as time passed, they were becoming less and less important to me. And a few years ago, I began asking myself, what is my worth without these metrics? Can a person feel worthy when they are in fact doing nothing, when they are simply being? Is a person who is choosing being over doing, stillness over activity, softness over aggression, collaboration over competition, considered valuable? How do we as a culture measure the value of qualities like slowness and softness and patience and gentleness and kindness and open-hearted listening and receiving instead of talking and doing and giving? Where were the rewards and recognition for that type of what I call radiant presence? Nowhere. This inquiry has been both terrifying and liberating on many levels, because I've had to plug out of every established norm and paradigm and structure that was handed to me, that is handed to each one of us as soon as we're born. And I had to retreat and unplug into another world. And I can tell you that being in this world was not fun or easy. I had to sit at the altar of all my fears, Because when I'm not doing and I'm not measuring my accomplishments and achievements, and no one is validating the art of being, who am I and what is my worth? There were layers and layers of fears to face. There was the fear of losing control, the fear of uncertainty, of not knowing where this inquiry was going, and also trying not to force it to arrive at any specific destination. There was this fear of not being supported by life or being provided for. There was a deep existential fear that said, if I'm not achieving, then I could just disappear. I could become invisible. I could become irrelevant, unwanted. I could perish and die. No one would notice. I came face to face with what I can only call my inherent and false sense of unworthiness, that something in me was just not worth loving, and I must compensate for it by doing and achieving and showing something for myself. I feared being alone as a result of that. So, in many ways, this podcast is my attempt at redemption for repeatedly abandoning my heart, my body's intelligence, and often my truth, for staying in the mental plane, strategizing, calculating, controlling situations in hopes of gaining acceptance and approval and validation and a sense of belonging from someone or something outside of me. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. By no means have I arrived at a destination on this inner journey. In fact, I am now convinced that there is nowhere to arrive. Insert platitude about the journey being the destination. But it felt like a good time to invite you to join me and walk with me. Because I know I'm not the only one who is asking these deep and hard questions, who is bumping up against these old paradigms that are destroying us and burning us out and creating all kinds of internal and external crises. I know I'm not the only one who thinks deeply and loves deeply and feels deeply. So this podcast is for you if you're a curious, conscious, non-conforming human being, not doing. And you have likely always felt like something was off about this world, that you didn't fully belong, didn't fully fit in, didn't feel fully understood, that the systems and the structures were just off, didn't fully work for you. You might have plugged in and made them work, but you felt uneasy and depleted and unseen as you did that. You sensed that there were issues that needed fixing, and maybe in your own big or small way, you have been doing something to make this world work better. On this podcast, you can expect fresh perspectives and insights and spiritual resources for us to do this very essential inner work, so we can claim our worth from the inside out. And this is not just for personal reasons. The world as we know it is going through many, many changes, and they are needed. We need to question our systems and structures. We need to introduce and embrace and embody new ways of living and thinking and being and creating and producing that serve all of us. And when we are able to come at these problems from the inside out, when we are securely grounded in our self-worth, we can have tremendous impact and influence through our very presence on this world. What is the value of a peaceful, calming, soothing, wisdom-filled presence? It is truly the most valuable currency doing the rounds right now. My hope is to share these podcasts like tiny little prayers. You see, my name in Hindi means prayer. And in the Himalayan region, where Tibetan Buddhism is practiced, we see these colorful prayer flags flying outside monasteries or higher altitudes. And these flags are inscribed with prayers. Prayers that are intended to be carried by the wind out into the universe to spread peace, compassion, strength, and wisdom. Each of these podcast episodes is like that little prayer, a small offering, an invitation for you to receive, rest into, reflect on, and see which ones, if any, resonate to make your own life simpler, softer, calmer, happier. If this invitation resonates with you and inspires you, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast so you get notifications when new episodes are launched. And if there is one person that you can think of in your life who would resonate with this call, this message, this prayer, I would love for you to share this podcast with them. Thank you so much for listening. Here is to your radiant presence.